it wasn't just their ears that was listening to us, it was their mind and their soul, you know what I'm saying? Yo, you gotta listen to LPs like this, you know what I mean?
Lost Boyz, Queens, New York, featuring Mr. Cheeks, Freaky Ta, DJ Spig Nice, and Pretty Lou. Today's feature is a group that managed to stand out in the 90s era of hip-hop for their unique sound that mirrored gangster rap and the more violent, expressive side of the culture at the time. Their music was the life of the party that focused on having a good time while also documenting the tragedies they saw growing up in and being around an environment not too forgiving to those stepping out of bounds or caught following the wrong crowd. Lost Boyz music was attractive to the ones that could relate to such environments, which instantly grabbed a hold of a large portion of hip-hop fans. Even if you couldn't relate, their stories were so vivid that you felt what they were saying, and it pushed them to the forefront of 90s East Coast rap. As you know, the 90s was the bloom of what we know hip-hop to be in its essence, as by then that era learned a lot from the 70s and 80s and refined what they were doing to create a peak in the culture, or golden era as they call it. Artists were doing everything to be different enough to stand out among the influx of rappers attempting their hand at a new way to make it out the hood other than selling drugs or playing sports that was becoming more and more mainstream, meaning more opportunity. It made the era ultra competitive, and as they say, iron sharpens iron, so it made the music great and fun to watch all the new artists every other month, bringing something new and progressive to the table. Stylistically, when you think of New York rap, you need look no further than the Lost Boyz and their Carhartt jeans, Timberland boots and winter jackets with a beanie or baseball cap and dreads. A style they're credited for having a large hand in making a staple of the 90s. As far as the music, they made songs you could play anywhere and let it ride, as it had something for everyone to enjoy. On the charts, they had some success, their first two albums going gold in 96 and 97 on Uptown Records, a label that didn't quite understand how to market them initially but managed to produce 2 top 10 albums in the country. There's no question the Lost Boyz had great potential before a tragedy would strike late in the decade, right before they were about to take a decisive step in their career on their third album heading into a new millennium, where rap music peaked in marketing and promotion. Freaky Ta was shot and killed leaving a birthday party for Mr. Cheeks, and downhill the group went from there. Spig Nice would find himself in heavy legal trouble, and the other members splintered off on their own, making the end of that great potential. What happened to the once promising career of the Lost Boyz? Salute to B-Rush on IG for this request. It's your boy JC, StuntedGrowthMusic. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. The Lost Boyz were a hip-hop group from Queens, New York that grew up in the same neighborhood and drew attraction to one another through their love for music. Mr. Cheeks was always known to be rapping somewhere on the side while Freaky Ta beat on the table and hyped him up. They met DJ Spig Nice, who was a musician and DJ, calling themselves the Stay Fresh Crew before Lost Boyz, performing at parks and open mics before it all got really serious. Not attracted to the drug lifestyle, they took music and made it their focus. In 1994, Uptown Records' Tim Patterson heard their demo and fell in love with their song Lifestyles of the Rich and Shameless that showed the storytelling ability of Mr. Cheeks that would go on to become a top 10 single in the country. Things went from 0 to 100 for the Lost Boyz, signing to Uptown and taking off. Stunt number 1, The Death of Freaky Ta. The interesting thing about the Lost Boyz was although they were a 4-man group, the lyrics were mostly sung by Mr. Cheeks, with Freaky Ta making musical contributions and Lou and of course their DJ Spig Nice adding to their live performances. Initially, only Mr. Cheeks and Freaky Ta were signed to Uptown Records and received royalties for their music, with Freaky being an intricate piece to adding the atmosphere that brought the best out of Mr. Cheeks. Ta was like the glue to it all that embodied the New York streets and brought the credibility to their records, also credited as a writer. According to those that knew him, like Tony Yayo, who grew up in the same neighborhood, he would always show his face and love to the hood, buying clothes and shoes for the guys and helping out any way he could. Musically, Lost Boyz' second single released August 95, Jeeps, Lex Coupes, Beamers and Benz, that rose on the charts with the visuals for the song driving it to 11 in the US, as it perfectly represented the hood they often referenced, shot in Queens, and showed the support they had being its representation. A third single, Renee, released not long after, January 96, that became their biggest song to date, rising to number 3 on the charts. It was an ode to a girl from Queens named Ebony that died while at a payphone during a gang-related drive-by. It's a song that made the Lost Boyz most recognizable. But behind the scenes, the group was going through internal issues by their third album. Ta and Mr. Cheeks, who also had their own crews, weren't seeing eye to eye. But in the end, they were friends, so Ta decided to show up to Cheeks' birthday party anyway. And leaving the party, Cheeks' crew offered Ta a ride home, which he rejected, feeling safe in the hood he thought he knew and always tried to help. He was shot in the back of the head in a mistaken identity situation gone wrong. When he died, it completely dejected the group, who finished the album, but after its release, things just wasn't the same without Ta. Stunt number 2, Mr. Cheeks going solo. As mentioned, Mr. Cheeks was always the front man and star of the show, so to speak, even though the 3 others brought what they brought to the table as well. After Freaky Ta died though, the music along with the atmosphere just wasn't the same. Even their live shows were different without Ta's raspy voice hyping not just Cheeks, but the crowd as well. The Lost Boyz and most importantly Mr. Cheeks had a decision to make: stand still or keep it moving. Being the only one left contractually obligated to still make music, Mr. Cheeks went forward with his solo career, signing to Universal and releasing his first single, the 2001 Lights Camera Action, that injected life into his personal situation and gave him his own promising start to his solo career. For him, things not only continued to move, but improved now that he didn't have to split everything 4 ways. But for Spig Nice and Pretty Lou, who were already in a situation their only stream of income had been cut off completely, it sent them to a place they were floating in the wind for years without the musical talent, nor any other abilities to keep up with the lifestyle they were used to. Mr. Cheeks going solo was really the musical end for the Lost Boyz, even though they didn't realize just yet things would get worse. Cheeks' solo album released in 2001 as well and charted 32 on the Billboard 200, but his career for the most part fell off from there, releasing 2 more albums in 2003 and 2004 and 1 more in 2015 that failed to reach the heights of his Lights Camera Action. Stunt number 3, the doors closed all the way. One of the saddest things about the Lost Boyz story behind the death of Freaky Ta was DJ Spig Nice being sentenced in 2004 to 37 years in prison, eventually doing 19 and a half and being released in 2021, far from any hope of the group ever getting back together late 2000s or in the 2010s to at least come together and capitalize on their legendary status of the 90s. In dire need of money, Spig Nice found himself in a position where he was a famous face that wasn't rich enough to leave the hood, where on the daily he was pressured to live like he was famous. The bills from trying to keep up with a certain image and lifestyle began to pile up, and I guess it became easier to risk it all than stay in a place everyone's looking at you to make something happen. He tried his hands hosting events and doing random shows for a few bucks here and there, but not enough to satisfy his needs in the end. He, along with 3 associates, were tried and convicted of committing 9 bank robberies, and on their 10th were caught. Detectives wanted Spig to tell on his accomplices, but when he wouldn't, the case went to trial and they gave him 37 years. His life for the next 20 years as he knew it was over, along with the future of the Lost Boyz as we knew it to be. All in all, the Lost Boyz accomplished a dream Cheeks describes as all he ever wanted to do, become a rapper. They had initial success and are considered one of the best from their era, but it's sad knowing although they became so famous and heralded, a few of the members still fell victim to the codes of the streets that end in either death or in prison. Cheeks continued to do music on a much smaller scale, while Pretty Lou became an accountant. They had lots of promise early on, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. Salute, much respect, rest in peace to Freaky Ta. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.
Yo, Brent. Yo, you seen it.